Week 9 of the Revolutionary Sports Show. I'm here, Corey Sullivan, and
And
over
I'm
there,
Brian Duchaine.
Brian Duchaine. Brian, always good to see you.
Always fun, Week 9, looking forward to it.
Well, to get us started, we had a Thursday night game last night. It was the Atlanta Falcons versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Unfortunately, I did not watch the whole game, Brian. I don't know if you did. I was too busy trying to watch Westbrook get dominated by the Golden State Warriors. I was expecting a much better game, but I figured, although this is a football show, wanted to just get out there that I really didn't watch the game. I'm sure nobody else really watched the end of this game either. It was a rather huge blowout. A great game by Matt Ryan, a great game by Jameis Winston. He was a little banged up at the end there. Some were saying a knee injury, although he walked on the field and shook hands with Matt Ryan afterwards and walked back to the locker room. So everything looked fine. Just looked like the game was out of reach and wanted to protect their investment. What did you think of this game? Did you even watch this game? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I did not watch very much of it. I only watched a little bit, saw the score, decided to turn it off. And I hear that Jameis Winston he was questionable to even return to that game, so it doesn't look like it's too bad, like you said. And moving forward, I think they're probably going to need him. But if he doesn't come back, not the end of the world. They can up their draft pick a little bit, and at this point, don't really rush into anything because that game was terrible. 43-20 was pretty much the final score. Added one on after the 2-minute warning and ended up 43-28. But if you ask me, it wasn't really close in the end, even though they tried to pad the stat sheet. Just wasn't a good game to watch, and I saw that coming. And then I get a notification saying that Winston is injured but questionable to return for the game. Never did, and I think he's going to be ready to go this week or next week, next Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't. Obviously, a great performance by Matt Ryan. His offense put up 43 points. The running game hasn't been that spectacular this year, but Matt Ryan putting up MVP stats. And on the other end, Jameis Winston is playing great lately. Started the year off with a lot of turnovers and has cut those down dramatically. I believe 9 touchdowns and 1 turnover in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But that game's over with. We're going to start with the Sunday morning games, and your Detroit Lions made a move this week. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They're facing the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they traded before the trade deadline their 7th-round draft pick for Jonathan Banks. Do you think that this addition will help them? Will it be that drastic of a change? How do you feel about this upcoming matchup?
Well, they do need guys in their secondary for sure. And with the Lions' 7th-round picks, and even the late-round picks, the Lions haven't really been able to turn into something real great anyway. Sometimes the 3rd and 4th-round picks, they can turn into great players. 1st round, 2nd round, usually work out for them. Something like Ndamukong Suh, Nick Fairley, those kind of guys will definitely add to their roster. But a 7th-round pick, not really much to give up for the Lions, especially because the Lions they're going to be a mediocre team this year, and I don't know if they'll make the playoffs or not, but it's not going to be like a number 1 pick that you're trading away in the 7th round. It's not going to be anybody good, really. It'll just be a middle-of-the-road 7th-round pick. So you might as well, I think, experiment with it, see what Jonathan Banks has to offer, and that secondary has been getting torched all year. So I don't really see anything wrong with it, and I think as long as they get him out there, get him affiliated with the defense and all that, I think it should be good to just kind of see at least what he brings to the table, and if not, then you cut him or try to trade him for another 7th-round pick to whoever wants him next year. It's not really a big deal to me, and I think they probably did the right thing here, and we'll see how it plays out. But as far as that Lions-Vikings game, I don't like the line going into it. Vikings by 7. And if you ask me, I think the Lions actually have a chance in this one. Sam Bradford looked absolutely terrible last week, and he's just not the guy that he has shown all year, and we've been over this whole time. Neither of us are really a big fan of Sam Bradford, and if he's going to continue to go out and play over his head, it's going to catch up to him one of these weeks. And I think this week might be the week, but the Lions defense is going to have to step up, and maybe Jonathan Banks is going to be the one that actually comes up with the pick in crunch time this time, because the Lions always save it for the very end to get that game going and to change the game. And the Lions are still, I believe, the only team in the league to have won or lost every game by one possession. So can they keep the streak going? I'm hoping so, and I'm hoping that they win it to keep it going. But Corey, what do you think in this game?
I think that the Lions have been playing really good football right now, and it's all on the back of their quarterback. He's been playing great. 9 touchdowns, one turnover in the last 3 or 4 games, and they're 3-1. Or in the last 4 games, they're 3-1. They lost to the Texans, who have a really good, if not one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and just barely lost to them. He's been rolling. And on the other side of the ball, the Vikings have been unable to slow down the pass rush. Bradford's been sacked 11 times in the last 2 games, and it's shown. They're the 2-game losing streak, and their running game has been awful. Bradford's been awful. The defense has tried their best, but it's just not an impressive offense. And when the offense can't move the ball, can't produce, then the defense is going to be on the field all game long, and it's gonna suffer. So I think that the Lions, with the way that they're playing, have a good chance. But the teams before have been able to get to the quarterback, and with Armonte Bryant being suspended for the Lions, one of the key factors of their pass rush, for substance abuse, I believe he's out 3 games, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get to Bradford. I think they could do it. They don't have that impressive of a defense, and I'm going with the Vikings. It's just too many question marks on that defense and being able to get to Bradford. And when he doesn't have that pass rush in his face, he's done a pretty good job this year. So I'm going with the Vikings, and I think they can hold off the Lions in their passing attack.
All right, I see what you're doing. You're trying to split from me to try to get back some of those wins. But moving on, Eagles, Giants. The line on this one, Giants by 2.5. Talk about it every week. And, the Giants receiving core, great receivers. And then you have people on the other side like Ryan Matthews for the Eagles, who can put the ball on the turf. He can also tear it up, put up 2-3 touchdown games. And it's really, I think this one's going to be more of a wash than anything. And it is at the Giants. And that's what the biggest factor is going to be for me. Eagles at Giants. I think the Giants are going to have to step up. Odell just going to have to stop being all about the attention and actually step up and play the game. Because I know Odell can come up with some big games, but until he stops messing around with the kicking net and stop messing around with other players and just pretty much just being a kind of a princess out there, I don't know how the Giants are going to be until Odell actually comes out and is the Odell that we saw the first year that he emerged into the league. And I think I'm going to go with the Giants for this one. I'm staying with the spread. Eagles, I just don't think can do it on the road. And we saw them in crunch time, throw picks, put the ball on the turf, and I just don't see them going into New York and taking one. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. Wentz was hot to start the year, 3-0 going into their bye week. But since that bye week, he's 1-3, really struggling to make adjustments to the NFL defenses. They seem to have figured him out at this point in his career, and that's what the NFL is all about. It's all about making adjustments and beating your opponent that way. And defensive coordinators have figured out a way to beat Wentz and to contain him, and he's played awful on the road, awful in the fourth quarter, one of the lowest QBRs, under 50 for fourth quarter play, and it's going to be tough for them to beat the Giants. The Giants seem like they've been rolling lately. Eli's finally getting into a rhythm with those 3, the trio of receivers, and Odell's leading the charge. His touchdown totals are a little low than what most people expect, but as the season rolls along and as Victor Cruz and Sterling Shepard continue to create openings for him, I expect Odell to take games over and have those big 200-yard, 2-touchdown games that he had a couple weeks ago. So I'm rolling with the Giants in this one, and I'll say that Odell's back to the 100-yard mark and at least a touchdown.
And then moving on to this next game, I don't think we really need to talk about this one too far in depth. We have the Jets and the Dolphins, the Jets who did their best to lose to the winless Browns. And I picked the Browns to win this one strictly because Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't sold on him at all, wasn't sold on the entire Jets team. And then they go out and win by 3 to the Browns, the Browns. Do we need to elaborate and just say one more time it was the Browns and they almost lost? This one, Dolphins by 3.5. I say the Dolphins get them by more than 3.5. I think the Dolphins are going to come out like they did against Pittsburgh and pretty much just take the Jets right out of the game from the beginning. And, the Dolphins defense is kind of emerging a little bit more and starting to show a little bit what everybody expected with that high-paid defensive line. And at this point, I don't think I'm going to pick the Jets to win the rest of the season because I picked them to lose to the Browns. I fully expected them to do it. Nobody really has confidence on that entire team, and I'm definitely going with the Dolphins at home for this one.
Yeah, I really don't know what the Jets are doing. They keep winning for some apparent reason, and their team's in shambles. You look at it, Geno Smith is hurt. He's probably done in New York. Ryan Fitzpatrick is unhappy. He's probably done in New York. Both of their contracts up this year. And Matt Forte is, 30-year-old running back, which no disrespect to Matt Forte. He's obviously a very good running back, but his days are numbered. And, looking at the defense, it's the most bipolar defense in the NFL. One of the best rush defenses in the NFL and one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. So there's just way too many holes to fill on that whole team in general. And then they're going out there trying their hardest to win games, and the only thing that they're doing is getting a worse draft pick. Are they going to be a team that gets to the playoffs and sneaks in a wild card and goes out to the Super Bowl? No way. There's not a chance. And talking about the other team, first off, I want to say Jay Ajayi is playing way over his head. I'm not saying he's a bad running back, but back-to-back games, 200, I'm going to say it a third time. There's no way he gets to 200 this week. And for the rest of the season as well. I mean, he's been proving me wrong each and every week. So if you have Jay Ajayi on your fantasy team, more power to you. I would love to play you this week or any other week except these last 2 weeks. But 200 yards for him. They've been keeping the ball out of Ryan Tannehill's hands. He hasn't turned the ball over in the last 2 games, and they've won. They've beaten the Steelers and the Bills, and I'm going with the Dolphins. They've been playing great, and they actually have something to play for. This is a team that a lot of experts in the preseason picked them to be in the Super Bowl, and I think they have the talent to be in the playoffs. I just don't think they can go all the way. So I'm going with the Dolphins, and I hope for the Jets' sake that they actually lose this game.
Now moving on to another trash team, the Jaguars at the Chiefs. Line in this one, Chiefs by 8. And I say they definitely cover that spread. I know you're a big fan of Blake Bortles. You're all high and mighty on Blake Bortles, thinking that he should be in the Pro Bowl. For everybody watching it, he's not actually a big fan. He hates Blake Bortles as a player. And, he just isn't really that superstar that everyone thought that he could be. And maybe it's Jacksonville. We saw Gabbert do the exact same thing. Way too high of expectations, and then quarterback goes out and just is not good whatsoever. And I think it's just maybe a bad environment, but then Gabbert goes to the 49ers and he can't do anything different. So maybe we're just missing something. Maybe these guys actually are going to emerge as great quarterbacks one day, but they're not showing it right now. And then you got okay receivers with Robinson, Hearns. They're not super good, but, and then one guy I was thinking of earlier this week, I was looking through his fantasy football profile, and you mentioned him earlier, Julius Thomas. What happened to Julius Thomas? Is he like the Vernon Davis, real good with the 49ers, then all of a sudden just falls off the face of the earth? I think it was more of a transformation. He starts out in Denver. Peyton Manning makes a name for him, and then he goes and takes money somewhere else. Not looking good. But as far as the line goes, I'm sticking with the Chiefs in this one, even though their run game looks absolutely terrible at this point. Jamal Charles on IR, likely done. And I just think it's something about the running backs this year. You got Eddie Lacy out for the season, Jamal Charles out for the season, Adrian Peterson done, Thomas Rawls out for seems like the whole season. He's played in maybe 2 or 3 games so far. And I just don't know what's going on with the backs this year. But I'm going to take the Chiefs anyway because Jacksonville is Jacksonville. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I think I'm not a Blake Bortles fan. I've been trying to vie for him this year, and I picked him on my fantasy team. I wanted him to do good, but the fact of the matter is he's just not a very good quarterback. He's the king of garbage time. Once the game's out of reach, he'll throw for 2 more touchdowns. He'll go for 200 more yards, and then all of a sudden his stats will look godly, and he'll have 300, passing yards and 3 touchdowns and 2 picks and a fumble. And it's too much. It's too much for that defense. It's a young defense, and I hope that he can figure it out. I really do. There's a couple of young quarterbacks that are figuring it out. Marcus Mariota, one of them. Jameis Winston, another one. A lot of guys, coming into the age where they're they learn they have to cut down on turnovers. It's the number one killer in the NFL. And if you turn the ball over, you're not going to win any games. And that's just what the Jags do. That's why they're sitting at 2-5 or wherever they're at. And the Chiefs are playing well. If Andy Reid is confident to start Nick Foles this week, I'm confident in going with his team because Nick Foles, we know, is not a good quarterback. So if he's confident enough to announce that he's starting Foles, the week of the game and not being a surprise game time decision, then he knows something that we all know, and that's the Jaguars are no good and they can't hang with the Chiefs no matter who their starting quarterback is. So I'm rolling with the Chiefs at home, and they're playing great this year. But getting to the game that everybody wants to see, I know it. I know everyone's dying to hear our analysis on this game. The Dallas Cowboys face the ever so fierce Cleveland Browns. Who you got in this game, Brian?
Allegedly America's team versus America's trash hole, the dumpster, the Browns. And Cowboys are favored by 7 in this one, 6-1 going into the game against the 0-8 Browns. And I don't know if the Browns are going to be as bad as the Lions were, the 0-16 Lions, but I'm hoping that there's no 0-16 Browns just so the Lions takes a little bit of weight off their shoulders. But as far as the Cowboys go, they do have to go to Cleveland, and it will be somewhat of a difficult game to play on the road and on real grass, unlike in the 72-degree regulated temperatures of Jerry World, Cowboys Stadium, or AT&T Stadium, I guess now they call it. But Dak Prescott is playing out of his mind. And Jerry Jones has said from the beginning, once Tony Romo is healthy, he's going to throw him back in there. And I don't know if he's lying about it or if he's actually serious about it. But knowing Jerry Jones, he's serious about it. But chances are Tony Romo will be thrown in there, be injured by halftime. Dak Prescott will be the starter for the rest of the year. But Dez Bryant, back. And I think he's just going to do more to that offense than they already have been doing. They were already a little shorthanded as far as the receivers go, and they were winning. So Dez Bryant going to force teams to double cover him. He's going to leave somebody else open. And Beasley, not really a fan of Beasley personally, but he just wasn't that number one receiver. And now that Dez is back, it's just going to help him even more. In the Browns, I don't really think I need to go into detail about the Browns because Cody Kessler, Terrell Pryor is really the only guy out there that I would even consider starting in fantasy football for the Browns. Everybody else, I don't know where to go from here. But I'm picking the Cowboys to cover the spread of 7 points, and I don't know if I'll pick the Browns for the rest of the year. What do you see in this one?
It's going to be hard to go against the Cowboys on any week, but against the Browns, eventually I think the Browns are going to win one. They just traded for the Patriots linebacker, Jamie Collins, traded a third-round pick for him. I'm not sure why the Patriots gave up potentially one of their best, if not their best, linebacker for a third-round pick, a Pro Bowler last year. And in the middle of a Super Bowl hunt, they give away one of the best linebackers in the NFL for nothing, pretty much. And it's going to be tough. It's you pair him up with Demario Davis and Christian Kirksey, and the Browns linebacking core is looking good. I mean, the rest of their team looks awful, as you already said, and Terrell Pryor looking good. Terrell Pryor looking great, doing it all for that offense, passing, rushing, receiving. He's trying to do it all, and they just can't seem to get him a victory. He deserves one, and like I said, I'm going to keep saying it every week. The Browns are going to win a game this week. It's just not this week. They're going to win a game this season, just not this week. So I'm rolling with the Cowboys, and the Browns got one of the worst run defenses, and Ezekiel Elliott is the real deal. So I think Ezekiel runs wild on them.
And the next game we're looking forward to, Steelers at Ravens, another terrible, terrible game. But the Ravens, we've talked about them before. They just kind of lack just about everything. Joe Flacco, just not worth the money at all. And then the running game, is there even a running game for the Ravens? We don't know. I guess stay tuned and you'll find out this week. But we haven't seen it so far. And then Ben Roethlisberger going out for the Steelers. And the reason the line is 1 point for the Steelers is strictly Roethlisberger. We've seen what the backup quarterbacks have done in Pittsburgh before, throw picks on fake punts and fake field goals like they did in Seattle. And I'm just not real sold on either one of these teams, but it's at the Ravens. I usually pick the home team in that situation, but I'm going to go with the Steelers in this one. And I think Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell definitely step up. Le'Veon Bell's going to run all over him, and Antonio Brown, as long as they can get him the football, he's going to keep him in the game. And I think the Steelers win this one in a close one by 3.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one. You're right. Joe Flacco, not impressive at all this year, not even in the slightest. But Big Ben hobbled, looked awful against the Dolphins. And it really depends on how healthy Big Ben is. Is he going to be hobbled just like he was in the Dolphins game, and the Ravens defense is going to be able to get to him? Or is he going to be healthier than you'd expect and just going to throttle him? Because Flacco with no Steve Smith Sr. is not even a mediocre quarterback. He's absolutely atrocious. And with what they're paying him, it's laughable. Then it's like Brock Osweiler and Kirk Cousins, although Kirk Cousins is playing pretty good right now. I'll give him his credit right now. He's playing well. But Flacco and that offense looks absolutely dreadful each and every week. It was a team that started off 3-0 and they've lost 4 straight. And this is a big game. Big Ben torn meniscus, only missed 1 week to be back for this game. It just shows you how important this game is for each team. Implications of number one in their division. And, divisional games, you never know. You can write it. You can do all the research and figure everything out on paper. But divisional games, you just never know what's going to happen. It's always something different. There's always a trick play or two that changes the outlook of the game. And I'm going with the Ravens. I believe that the Steelers, if Big Ben is healthy enough, Le'Veon Bell, who's been balling each and every week, has yet to get to the end zone. I think this is his week to get to the end zone, and he can go crazy this game. He can go crazy any game. And I think if Big Ben is healthier than I expect him to be, then the Steelers will win this easily. But I don't think that he's that healthy after a torn meniscus, only 1 week removed. So I'm going with the Steelers or the Ravens and their linebacking core to get to Big Ben and really cause some trouble for him. So Ravens this week for me.
All right, now we have the Saints and the 49ers. 49ers are looking like they're close to Browns bad at 1-6. I don't think anybody's Browns bad at this point. But if the 49ers and the Browns were to face off this week, it might actually be a good game. But the Saints against the Seahawks I don't know if you could say they played a great game because the Seahawks really shot themselves in the foot by all the penalties they got. Some were questionable, and a lot of people like to blame the refs. But, the Seahawks had chances, and they had play calls that they could have run to stop the clock, end of the game, and end up winning that game. But the Saints definitely stepped up, and their defense looked way better than it has all season. And I don't know what it was. I think Russell not healthy 100% for sure, and I think that played a role and helped the Saints defense keep them in the game. But against the 49ers, if the Saints can beat the Seahawks, they can sure beat the 49ers with Kaepernick. Like you said, Kaepernick trying his best to stay relevant. And, I'm just not a fan of the 49ers. The defense is trash. Quarterback, not good. We already saw Gabbert get benched. Starting Kaepernick, nothing's changed. And at this point, I don't really know where to go with the 49ers because Drew Brees against the 49ers defense, I just think it's going to be an ugly matchup for the 49ers defense. And I say Drew Brees can put up big-time yards and maybe even throw for 350, 400 yards this week. What do you see in this one? Yeah,
I'm with you. This is the type of matchup MVPs look forward to. This is where you pad your stats. 49ers virtually have nothing to play for or play with both at this point. And Navarro Bowman out. The defense has no hope. The pass defense is decent. They're not a bad group of guys, but the team in general is in shambles. Colin Kaepernick's trying his best, running around everywhere to try to make this team and will them to victory each and every week, but every week they get blown out. They played the Cowboys close, and then they beat the Rams. Who knows how big of a win that was, but they just look atrocious. They're not a good-looking team at all. This is not the same team that we all saw week one shut out the Rams, and they look good. And I don't know what happened to that team or where that team went, but they are nowhere to be seen, and I do not see them resurfacing this week against potential MVP candidate Drew Brees and his receiving core. They're all playing well right now. Cook, Snead, Fleener, they're all Mike Thomas. Don't want to leave him out. They're playing great right now, and like you said, they just came off and beat the Seattle Seahawks. And I don't see the 49ers slowing them down, so I'm rolling with the Saints this weekend.
And then we got the Panthers at the Rams. I know it'll be tough because it's at the Rams. Panthers are favored by 3 points in this one. I know the Panthers at 2-5. They looked like they didn't really have much to play for last week even, and then they come out and just play. It looked like unstoppable football. And, you know, they got Cam Newton, Jonathan Stewart. I don't know if he's the X factor, but they're going to be definitely running behind him, and he's going to try to carry the team. And, their defense, their secondary, a little bit of questions there, but as far as the Rams go, it's not like the Rams defense is much better. So, it's at LA, which will be pretty crazy with around 100,000 people in attendance, but I just don't see a whole lot. And, Todd Gurley he emerged last year, and he just hasn't really looked the same with LA. And I don't know what the Rams are doing. They usually kind of surge at the end of the season, but I just don't really see the Rams beating Carolina, even though the Panthers are 2-5. I think they had some injuries. Now they're getting some of their guys back, and I think I say they win it in a close one just because it's on the road, and I think they end up taking a field goal at the last minute and winning by 3.
I don't think it's gonna be that close. Cam Newton is back. He's one to put on a show. I will say that. And Cam in LA, first season. The NFL is back in LA in a long time. It's Jay Stu is back. 2 touchdowns last week. Really is showing that he's back. He can still do it with his leg injury, ankle injury, whatever it was. And Kelvin Benjamin needs to get added into this offense. He's been pretty much out of the game plan. I don't know if he's been out of the game plan. Just hasn't been getting the ball as much as you'd expect a superstar player to. And credit to him, there hasn't been a whole lot of complaining. I haven't seen any articles or heard any outbursts of Kelvin Benjamin and his unhappiness with his role in the offense. So I think that it's going to come in bunches. And now that the season's progressing, and hopefully Cam can start playing like the MVP that he was last year and really cut down on those turnovers. That's really what made the team successful last year. It was his inability to not turn the ball over, his ability to not turn the ball over, and to score touchdowns in bunches. And I see that Case Keenum on the other side of the ball does the exact same. He turns the ball over a lot. And he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league next to Fitzpatrick and Flacco and all those guys. And they have more turnovers than they have touchdowns this year. And I don't think that you can beat this Panthers team if you're not going to stretch their defense, and I don't see this Rams team being able to do that. Kenny Britt, the only consistent weapon on that offense, and they just don't have the firepower to beat the Panthers. And I'm rolling with the Panthers in this one, and I think it'll be I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think 2 scores is what'll be the final, maybe Panthers by 10.
And the Colts at the Packers. It's always tough to win at Lambeau Field, especially for the Colts. Colts just haven't looked like themselves. And I know you said that the receiving core might be the reason that they haven't looked too good, but Andrew Luck just hasn't really looked like himself either. And maybe it's that their main receivers were out. Dante Moncrief supposedly going to come back and carry this team, but I don't think so. I think the Colts at 3-5 can't be saved by Dante Moncrief at this point, and I just think that the Colts are missing something. I don't know what it is. If it's their defense gives up a ton of points, or if it's their offense. Neither one of them have really looked super impressive, and then their offense will have a good game and a good week, and then their defense will be terrible and end up losing the game. Or, their defense will step up, their offense can do nothing. So it's really at Lambeau Field. Packers by 7 is the pick in this one. Although Aaron Rodgers, we talked about it before, hasn't really looked like himself either. We're talking about Ty Montgomery being a running back. Just think about that for a little bit. Eddie Lacy, likely out for the season, like we talked about earlier. And I just think the Packers win this one strictly because of the home field advantage and because the Colts just aren't really who they used to be. And I'm going with Packers by 7. I'm going to stick with the line in this one. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, it's hard for me to believe in the Colts. The offense is moving the ball well. Frank Gore proved me wrong and ran for 100 the other week, and he's looking decent. The offense is looking great. Andrew Luck not turning the ball over, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards. He's loving T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's doing a great job with the rest of their weapons down. He's still finding ways to get open, still finding ways to get into the end zone. But the defense is it's awful. It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and it is the reason that they have more losses than wins. And on the other side, the Green Bay Packers won. They're winning, and Rodgers just doesn't look good. Last week had a great shootout with the Atlanta Falcons, and the ball was in Rodgers' hands to win on the game-winning drive, and nothing. Just threw a goose egg. And I'm a Russ fan, and Russ did the same thing, but it just hasn't looked like the same Rodgers. And maybe he is hurt. I don't know what the excuse is for him. Javonte Adams disappears between games. He'll have a huge game, and then nobody will know where this guy is on the field. Randall Cobb didn't play last game. Could be another reason. And Jordy Nelson doesn't look like the same Jordy Nelson that dominated the league once upon a time. So Ty Montgomery, I like Ty Montgomery. I'm like you. I don't know about Ty Montgomery at running back. He was my favorite player in college at Stanford when he was there, and he was a guy that did it all as well, a kick return, punt return, receiver type of guy. But at running back, I'm just not convinced that he's the best running back in the league. But is what they got right now. They're working with the bottom of the barrel, and I think I like it. I like what he can do. I like he can catch passes out of the backfield. Obviously, he's a receiver. And it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. But only the Cowboys have come into Lambeau and beat the Packers there. So until the Packers prove that they are no longer the brand name that they usually are, I'm rolling with them at home against this Colts and their defense because I don't see them stopping Rodgers. Although, like I said, like we said, Rodgers has not looked anything like, the former MVP that he usually does. So Packers, go Pack, go.
And Titans at Chargers. Chargers by 4 is the line in this one. Titans, Marcus Mariota, looking like it was a good draft pick last year to use that on him. Second year in the league, and he's looking like he's getting the feel of things. And although the Titans are 4-4, they're not a real great team. They do have DeMarco Murray, who's still looking like he was on the Cowboys, and he was all right on the Eagles, and wasn't really a big fan of him on the Eagles, and now he's on the Titans, and the Titans are just one of those mediocre teams that they might finish 8-8 this year. I don't see them making the playoffs or anything like that. But Chargers, same type thing. I'm not really sold on Phillip Rivers or really anybody on the team. And you mentioned Gordon, and it's just not really a Pro Bowl type roster. Not really anything scary in this matchup. There's not really anybody that's just going to go out and really make this game. And I think it'll be close, and I think I'm going to go with the Chargers in this one. I think it's kind of a wash because both of them kind of unproven teams that are still figuring it out, but I'm going to go with the Chargers. I'm going to say they win by 4 in this one. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, like you said, it's a battle of two teams that aren't overly impressive. It's not a, AFC wild card matchup or AFC divisional championship. It's two teams that are, trying to find a way to get to the next level. But, Marcus Mariota just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Marcus Mariota, if you're watching this. Just turned 23 and is arguably the hottest player offensively in the last 4 games. 10 touchdowns, 2 turnovers in the last 4 weeks, and his team's 3-1. He's rolling right now, and his running game, DeMarco Murray, is right along with him. 115 yards rushing on the ground the last 2 games, and the offense is moving the ball. The defense is pretty good. One of the best pass rushing teams in the NFL, 22 sacks on the season. And if they're able to get to Phillip Rivers, this Chargers team is not overly impressive. They're not going to beat you in numerous different ways. If they're going to beat you, they're going to beat you through the air, and they're going to outscore you. That's how the Chargers are going to beat you. And they played pretty much every single one of their games close, I believe, within a touchdown. And I'm rolling with the hot hand. I got to go with Mariota. I like what he brings to the table, and he's a unique talent. So I don't believe that Rivers is a bad quarterback. I just think that Mariota has the hot hand right now, and I think that they got what it takes to win this one in San Diego. So going with the Titans in this one. And that takes us to the Sunday night game, which is actually a great matchup on paper. We'll see what you think. We got the Denver Broncos heading into Oakland, California to take on the Raiders. Who do you got in this matchup?
This one's really tough for me to decide because C.J. Anderson out for the season. We weren't real high and mighty on him to begin with, and then Devontae Booker steps up, and now he's limited in practice yesterday. So at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because you have Simeon, who we've seen what he can do. He's either really decent, not real good, or he's not good. And there's not really a Simeon that's going to come in and carry him like Peyton Manning did last year or anything like that. And then you have their run game. There's just a question mark there with some injuries, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hang with the Raiders. But then the Raiders are on the other side. They played a close one last week. Sebastian Janikowski out there doing his best, clanking some field goals off the uprights, missing them wide. And at this point, it's just hard for me to pick a winner in this one. But given the injuries on the Broncos side, Derek Carr, I think, is just going to come out and play over his mind at home. And Crabtree maybe going to put up a slightly above mediocre game for this one. And we'll see what happens. And I think Crabtree has actually been a better fit with the Raiders than he was with the 49ers. And I think he's kind of emerging as one of the decent receivers in the league, if you will. I don't want to say he's the better receiver in the league because he's not that good, but he's definitely kind of rejuvenating his career with the Raiders. And Seth Roberts, I was a big fan of him last year in the preseason. He tore it up, and then he's kind of vanished. And then he catches the game-winning touchdown last week, splits the defenders, and he's gone. So with the Raiders, I think their fans are probably going to be bringing D batteries to the game, throwing them at each other and opposing fans. And I'm going to go with the Raiders in this one just strictly because Simeon, I'm not sold on him. Booker, we don't know what he can do. Raiders, I'm not real sold on either with their 6-2 record, but they're at home and they're a 1-point favorite, and I'm going to stick with that. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, it makes sense. The Raiders can put up points in bunches, and Simeon and that Denver offense isn't the most impressive. If their defense isn't playing at a high level, you said dealing with some injuries. Aqib Talib, one of them. Corner, you definitely don't want to have your corner hampered facing one of the top passing quarterbacks, or potentially the top passing quarterback in the NFL, coming into their home. And Michael Crabtree, I've always been a Crabtree fan. Unfortunately, when he played for the 49ers, I couldn't be a fan of his, but I'm glad he's finding some success there in Oakland. Amari Cooper, another guy who's not getting the notoriety league-wide that some other receivers are, is quietly having a great year in Oakland. Both of those guys, those two in Carr is really all they got offensively. They got a three-headed rushing attack that does decent. They get those short yardage touchdowns, but nothing overly impressive game by game. And that defense is still awful. It's still one of the worst defenses in the league, and that's the only thing that scares me against this Broncos team is, the defense for the Broncos usually comes to play. More often than not, you can pretty much bank on them shutting down the opposing offense. But this offense for the Broncos has to get going. Devontae Booker has to be healthy, and he has to keep the ball out of Trevor Simeon's hands. I'm not sure why they keep playing him. Paxton Lynch is just sitting there waiting for his number to be called. And as we get later into the season, it's you're losing valuable reps from the guy that's going to be your future franchise quarterback. And if he is, you want him to get those playoff reps and those reps leading into the playoffs, so he's not, hitting mid-season stride as everyone is hitting their playoff stride. So I'm not sure what their offense is doing. I'm not the coach of the Broncos, so it's not my concern. But I want to see what this defense can do. That's what wins championships, and so I'm going with the Broncos regardless of the location.
Now moving on to the game, I know me and you have been waiting to talk about this whole time. Bills at Hawks. We've seen the Bills go up against the NFC West, and they love the NFC West this season. I don't know what it is, but they're just tearing the NFC West apart. And then they also beat the Brady-less New England Patriots, which, I mean, that was pretty impressive that they could hold them to 0 points on defense, but I don't think we're going to see a performance like that again because Seattle does have a starting quarterback ready to go unless Trayvon Boykin is going to step in due to Russ's injuries. But Russell just seems like he's stubborn this year, and he's not going to sit out regardless of if he has a broken leg. He's still going to go out there and hobble around and try to throw passes. Maybe it's just me, but I just think Russell does not want to sit out. He doesn't want to give the ball to a rookie. And although Russell cannot run, he can't escape the rush. He can't get outside the pocket like he used to. I think he's still throwing the ball okay. And if the receivers can actually get to the Bills' defense, I think the Seahawks don't really have trouble with this. And, Michael Bennett facing some injuries, that's going to be tough because likely not able to play. They're without Luke Wilson. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how Jimmy Graham steps up against a team like Buffalo. Pretty good on defense, and you got LaShawn Shady McCoy, who's going to come out here and try to be shady in Seattle and try to run all over the defense. I just don't see it. I think with the home field advantage, I think Tyrod Taylor, he's been serviceable for sure, and he's been decent, but I think when you put him in an environment like CenturyLink Field, I just don't think he's the type of quarterback that can continue what he's been doing all season. And I just think at some point Tyrod Taylor is going to face an environment like CenturyLink. And CenturyLink's like no other. It's going to get super loud in there. And I just think he's going to make some mistakes. They're going to have some false start penalties. And then Russell Wilson on the other side. Dougie B stepping up. Jimmy Graham. I think he's going to have a big day. Jermaine Kearse, I don't think he's going to do much, even though he's inconsistent. He comes out sometimes and has a good game, but I don't think he's going to do much in this one. And I think the Hawks actually win this one by a touchdown. I think they're going to cover the spread and look good at home because I think on the road they get off to shaky starts, but at home they just look like a totally different team. And I think the Hawks are going to do it on Monday night, and they're usually good in primetime games at home. And I just think that crowd's going to be crazy. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit. Last week, gave up 102 yards rushing to Tim Hightower, something this defense doesn't really do a lot. But you think about it, and most likely Tim Hightower wasn't really on the game plan. So that was a little surprising to see him as much as you did this last week. But going against the Bills, you know that you're going to see Shady McCoy. He's dealing with a hamstring issue, and hopefully he's healed. But you never want to bank everything on a guy with a hamstring issue there. Much more serious than a guy with a sprained ankle, and it can act up at any time. So, hopefully, like I said, hopefully he's healthy. I always, like to play players, play teams that guys are at full health, so there's no excuses as to why they won or lost. And like you said, Tyrod hasn't been overly impressive. He's just been a perfect game manager. Similar to Dak Prescott, he hasn't thrown for 300, 400 yards per game. And just the offense is really rode on his shoulders. He's been more of a guy that just doesn't turn the ball over. Don't turn the ball over, get some first downs. That has been Tyrod's calling this year, and he's answered it perfectly. He's let Shady run wild, and this team goes as Shady goes. If Shady's over 100 yards of total offense, they're 4-0. If he's under 100 yards of total offense, they're 0-4. So right now they're sitting at 4-4 on the season. And you best believe Shady is the vocal point of the Seahawks defense each and every practice, each and every game. So I think that they can shut down Shady. They always seem to do it against top flight competition. When you know what you're going against, Tim Hightower, I said obviously the outlier. I don't even think Tim Hightower thought he was going to have that great of a game against the Seahawks this last week. And, hopefully the Seahawks can get some guys back. We talked about it last week that they had a guy missing on each level. Mike Bennett was missing on that defensive line, and then Pierre Luis was missing as a linebacker, and Mike Morgan is obviously out, and then Cam Chancellor missing in the secondary. So a guy on each level. Not making excuses, but that's just how the game works. There's injuries, and that's something that you have to deal with. So hopefully the Seahawks can get some guys back to shore some of those weaknesses up. And I think that it's going to be a tough day for Russ, facing off against the best pass rush in the NFL, 26 sacks on the season. And I think that they'll be able to get to him. Unfortunately, I think that, he's going to hit the turf. And hopefully, we're going to see how healthy Russ really is, because Buffalo's weakness is their run D, but Christine Michael just hasn't been anything spectacular. He's had his chances, and he's got to the end zone a couple of times, got some got some touchdowns, got some nice little juke moves and whatnot, but he just hasn't really taken over this starting running back position in my eyes, and probably in a lot of other people's eyes. And it's going to be interesting to see what this offense can do. If they can keep that Bills defensive line and the linebackers out of the backfield and keep Russ upright, I think that the Seahawks are in for a big day. But if they're getting the Russ, it's going to be tough. But since I'm coming home, I'm going to the game. I got to go with the Hawks. I'm going to be in there screaming as loud as I can. So go Hawks. I think they can do it.
I didn't know you were going to be in attendance, and you should have let me know. So I guess not too late, but I'm definitely looking forward.
I apologize. Are you going to be at the game? You always at the game. I always see you on chat.
So now that you're at the game, I don't think that there's really going to be much excuse for the Hawks to lose this one. It's Revolutionary Sports Show hosts are going to be complete at that game. And the Hawks can't lose with both of us in attendance. So, the Week 9 picks, looking forward to Monday night. Once again, I'm Brian Duchaine.
And I'm Corey Sullivan.
We'll see you later.
Peace.